What's up, guys? Evan Jarvis here with a brand new episode of the All In Poker Podcast. This episode, my guest is YouTuber, keynote speaker, professional poker player, and coach, ALEC TORELLI. ALEC has tons of experience playing in the biggest cash games in the world. In this podcast, we talk about his experiences playing in the high-stakes games in Macau, as well as the journey that got him there and the people that supported him along the way. I was surprised by some of the people ALEC connected with over his journey, and I'm sure you'll be surprised and impressed as well. I had so much fun recording this conversation, and I hope you get as much out of it as I did. In case you don't have 2 hours to listen to the podcast, I've timestamped the episode below so you can skip ahead to the parts that are most interesting to you. And ALEC was nice enough to extend a special offer to the Gripsed community. When you use the link below in the video description, you will get 2 weeks of free access to his new training site, consciouspoker.com. Now, with the intro out of the way, hope you enjoy the conversation. Let's get stacking. All right, what's up, everybody? Evan Jarvis here for Gripsed Poker Training, and welcome to the live stream of the first ever live episode of the All In Poker Podcast. Normally we do these pre-recorded, but ALEC came up with the idea of doing it live. So today my guest on the All In Poker Podcast is pro poker player, keynote speaker, entrepreneur, and founder of Conscious Poker, Mr. ALEC TORELLI, who is coming fresh in off a $20,000 win on Live at the Bike and some epic travels on the West Coast as well, because that's how he rolls. ALEC, how you doing, brother?
Great, man. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the flattering intro. Excited to be here, and obviously been keeping up with your content for a long time. We've chatted a lot off the record, just personally too. So it's long overdue that we get some time in like this.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, man. I was looking through the old emails that we had, and I see it's been about 2 years since we first talked about doing this, and I'm like, do you want to do this?
Crazy.
You said 100%, I'm down. And then I didn't get back to you because I just went off on some silly tangent.
Both of us, man, that's life, you know? So, well, I'm glad we both made time. So this is going to be great.
Yeah. So I want to have the viewers get to know you and your story a little bit better. So if we can roll it back all the way to the beginning, can you talk about what your first few experiences were like with poker?
Yeah, so my family played poker on holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas, and we did play Texas Hold'em. It was in the rotation, but it was by no means as prominent as it is today. This was, in the 90s. And we also played a myriad of other games. We played like everything, like one-eyed jacks in the hole are wild, like anything, right? And that was a lot of fun. So I was infatuated with cards from a young age, and it felt kind of natural when Texas Hold'em came around that I was like, I like poker. I play cards with my family. I kind of had this affinity for it already. And so I got invited to a friend's house one day. I was 16. Moneymaker just won the main event. And he's like, do you want to come play poker? It's, $5 or $10 buy-in. We'll have pizza and whatever. It'll be a lot of fun. I was like, sure. I went over to his house. I won $12 my first time playing. And as they say of any gambler, the worst thing that could happen is you win your first time because then you're hooked. And so that was really what it was for me. Like I won and I was just like, this is amazing. I was right at that perfect age where everyone else was getting a job. And I was like, oh my gosh, I made money doing something I love, playing poker. And I immediately was like, what if I can just have fun playing poker and make some money? Like, I just want to play as much as possible. I wasn't necessarily thinking that like a business plan, but I was just like, oh, I won $12. This is awesome. Let me keep doing this. And so I would keep playing. I would start to play in home games. Eventually we were playing, 3 days, 4 days a week. We would play, very quickly would play all our weekends, like 10, 12 hours a day on weekends with friends. And I was like winning. I was not the best player, but I was, quickly amongst the best players. And, I read a book, I read Play Poker Like the Pros, and just started playing a lot of home games. And that really like kickstarted my poker career. I took it very seriously from a young age. I would have, strategy calls with friends where we'd talk poker strategy for hours. And I read, absorbed, and played and thought about poker all the time.
Okay. So in addition to it being kind of an exciting way to make money, I know that same feeling. That's what I had right away, where I'm just like, amazing. I play a game and I get to make money, two of my favorite things. Did you also find it was like a really good social outlet for you, like a setting where you actually felt really comfortable and you really vibed with all the people you were, playing with?
Yeah, that's a great observation. And I was never, a jock in high school. I was
Mhm.
like, I kind of got along with everyone and I was cool with everyone. That's just sort of my personality, but I was never like, the star football player. Like I was in musical theater, I was in choir, and like, this was something where like all of the people were equals, right? It wasn't like, oh, there's this guy on the basketball court and then this guy on the football stadium. It was like at the poker table, everyone's equal, right? So you're playing poker with all these people that you would normally not socialize with, and then you could also beat them. So like in that moment, I was in my element because I was cooler than them, and they like, sometimes they couldn't beat me, and I like, would win against these players that in any other capacity in high school they were like, in a cooler crowd, or they were better than me at sports, or whatever it was. And so there was also that element where like I found something that like I could shine at, and that was very cool to me, uh, coming from my background that's a little more niche.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I also spent some time in theater. I spent some time in band. I did a lot of gaming in high school. I was
Yeah.
trying to figure out my way, and those weren't the most like popular, cool things. And when I first found poker in university and started winning at it, I'm like, wow, finally something that I really feel good about myself with and that I can build my self-confidence with. Because here's the thing. I've been playing cards and games since I was young. Finally, a game that's cool. Finally, a game that's kind of mainstream. Um, and yeah, it's just beautiful how poker kind of filled that gap for people like yourself and me, and I'm sure a lot of people who are tuning in today.
Yeah, that's cool. We have similar backgrounds too. I didn't know you were in theater and band, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's totally different. But yeah, it is really cool, and also poker's so exhilarating when you win. It's just like there's so many elements that make it captivating for someone in their formative years.
Oh yeah, it's such a rush. It was a better high than any of the drugs that I got exposed to. And it was like, okay, I'm making money, so I'm doing something good. Like I'm getting a rush, but it's for something that's accepted by society, so that's good. So talking a little bit about online poker, what was it like when you transitioned from live to online? Because I remember, you were a pretty prominent player on Full Tilt back when it all started.
Yeah, well, I got started on party poker, and I
Mhm.
started playing there in high school, and I was winning like quite a bit. So I had one day after school that sort of went down at the school where I bought into this $30 tournament, and we started at like, I don't know, 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. or whatever, and I played until 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. or whatever, and I won, and it was like 2,500 or 2,250, something like
Mhm.
that, which for a kid in high school was like I was the richest person in the world,
Yeah.
you know. So there were moments like that where I had these like boosts and these kickstarts and these things that went really well for me that reinforced my love and motivation to keep playing poker. I also had a week where I was playing 1-2, and I had a bet with a friend that I could win 3 grand in a week playing 1-2. And I was very structural about it. I broke it down like, okay, I need to win, 600 and whatever dollars a day. I'm going to play this many days a week. I need to play this many hours. I'm going to play 4 tables. And like, I quit every day when I won that amount.
Mhm.
And I did it. And so there were these times when I would have these surges of, um, growth in poker, at a very young age. And so that was awesome. I did well in some tournaments online too, where we cashed for a lot. That the Sunday Million. I don't think it was called the Sunday Million then, but whatever. But yeah, I was doing that, and then I think by the end of high school, I was playing. I want to say 3-6 and 5-10 online. I actually remember when the biggest game on Party Poker was 2-4 or 1-2. It was either 1-2 or 2-4, and then there was a day that they opened either 2-4 or 3-6 and 5-10. And I remember we ditched school that day and went to the internet cafe and played online poker. And so there was like, oh my God, there's all these new games, there's all these new tables. We were already beating the biggest games online at the time. And I remember we jumped in those biggest games, probably not doing the best bankroll management, but a friend and I, we kind of took a shot. And like we were winning in those games in high school. And so we were making quite a bit of money, excuse me. And that was incredible.
Yeah.
You know, just that really compelled me to keep playing, keep working hard, never to get a job, and just try and make poker work all the time. And then when I went to college, I was 18. That was 2005. Poker was still totally booming online, and I would just continue to play online. I did well in some online tournaments. Um, and It was really when I didn't get started with. I was playing on full tilt a bit at the time, but things really shifted to full tilt for me a lot more when I think it was 18 or 19. I moved down to Australia. I dropped out of college, had like 30K or something like that. I couldn't play in the US, and I wanted to compete overseas and in live tournaments. And so I went to Australia. I ended up loving it so much. I lived there for 3 months, or I stayed there for 6 months, excuse me. And I got up at 4 a.m. one day to play the FTOPS, which was then the biggest tournament in history. And 16 hours later, I won for over $250,000 in a single day. And so that gave me a huge bankroll. And at the time, I was playing like 5-10 and 10-20, but I moved up to 25-50 on Party Poker, and that was the biggest game. And I really crushed that game. I did very, very well then, and then I slowly moved up to the biggest games on Full Tilt that year in 2007. And I won over $1 million in cash games on Full Tilt alone in 2007. So that really, sort of put me on the map in the poker world, and really gave me the bankroll to then go play all the big live games and travel the world full time and play all the events I wanted to.
Yeah, that's amazing. Because I remember seeing you sitting the 200, 400 games and just being like, wow,
Yeah, that
this
was
guy.
during that time.
Yeah, and I didn't know you had the cash game background. I'm like, this guy won a tournament, and I was just gonna sit these games because I'd seen some other tournament players go and do that. But you had the cash game background that gave you the confidence to play heads up.
Yeah, I was always a cash game player. Yeah, that was amazing to me because I had the FTOPS jersey,
Yeah.
and it was this jersey you got if you won one of their major tournaments. You get this jersey, and so there weren't that many events at the time. So I got this gold jersey, and that was my avatar, and you couldn't change it. And I was kind of like, I didn't really want this jersey as my avatar. I kind of wanted the other one where I can do the emojis and like have the face go happy when I won and sad when I lost. But
Yeah.
like, I realized that I got so much action because I had this jersey. Because people would see the jersey, then they would look me up and they'd be like, "Oh my god, this guy won $250,000 in a tournament. He
Right.
has no idea what he's doing in cash games." Whereas I was always a cash game player. Like I made all my money playing high stakes cash games or low stakes at the time, but the bigger cash games that were online I was kind of always underground, but that's always how I made my money. So like I was really confident in the cash games. I shifted over to heads up because it was faster paced, it was easier to get action. And frankly, if you have an edge over someone heads up, like there's no variables, you're just going to crush. And so I became quickly specialized in heads up, and I just got so much action, and I was on top of the game for a while there.
Nice, man. Nice. And it sounds like you had a good crew coming up that kind of supported you in the growth. You were saying, like we were crushing it, we were doing it. Can you maybe mention three of the key poker mentors you had along the way, and maybe one lesson they each gave you in this really kind of formative stage of your career?
Sure. Tom Dwan. I met him in the Bahamas when I think the first live tournament I went to, I think it was 2005. He was playing high stakes on Party Poker at the time with a guy named LOL Tricked You. He was like another legend that was playing high stakes games at the time. And I just got to watch play in a six max game against this guy. And there were just plays he was making that were just so like seemingly crazy and outside the box. And like they were doing things like 3 betting and 4 betting, and like that sounds so normal today, but like nobody 3 bet ever in those
Right.
games. Like there was just no 3 betting, and they were like 3 betting and 4 betting, and they were doing it with like marginal hands for like it was just so far ahead of what was going on. And so just watching him play and talking poker with him, we also went to Rome together in New York City together. And we traveled together and stayed together in those cities. So we did some traveling around the world together too. And that was 2007, something like that. So just coming up with him and talking a lot of poker and watching him play, playing online, stuff like that together, really just shaped the way I thought and allowed me to be more creative and think outside the box. Of course, we've since played a lot together in the big games in Macau, which we can get to later.
Yeah.
But that was like really, creative influence. Another really close friend I've had for the past, I don't know, 15 years is Andrew Roble. He played under Good to See You online, obviously one of the most successful people in poker today. And I met him in Aruba in 2006, maybe. I ended up getting eighth in that tournament. And we both hung around for a couple days afterwards, and became good friends after that. And we've lived together, we've traveled together, and been close for the whole time. Just like very smart, very disciplined, very successful. I respect Andrew a lot. Obviously, I think one of the best players, and I learned a lot from him about like just the habits of a poker player, like how to be not just better at playing poker, but also just how to manage yourself better, think about the business of poker better, and those sorts of things. So those two people were very influential. And then there was a host of other ones, people that might not know as well, but that I'd like to think that everyone that I came across on my journey, I learned something from. Like, for example, I had another friend named Dane, who was a couple of years older than me. I was always kind of the youngest, so I always hung out with older people, and I always had a lot to learn from them because they were always, much more experienced and mature. And especially at a young age, like 18, 19, the difference between 18 and 23 is like massive, right? I mean, there's 5 years of adult life, it's like 25% older than you, so I had a lot to learn from them. And he was running a online poker business. He was actually one of the biggest affiliates for party poker. So he was making money by signing people up to play on party poker. Basically took me under his wing, and I became his sub affiliate. So I was the person underneath him, and he taught me everything he knew. And I also quickly became one of the bigger affiliates on party poker. I was making, I think before the ban of party poker in the US, I was making like 30K a month, biggest month. And signing people up to play on party poker. So like there's so many people that I learned different things from. Like I learned business from him. And I learned that whole aspect of poker that I never would have learned. So there were a lot of people on my journey. Those are just three examples. There's so many more people. I lived with a guy named Mike, Justin. I mean, there's just so many other people that I learned so many things from. But
yeah, it sounds like your willingness to go for it, and the fact that you just really committed to the poker lifestyle and becoming the best player that you can be kind of got you aligned with these other people, and your social skills and your willingness to learn and your openness gave you the opportunity to get really close to these guys who, we're happy to share that stuff with someone who was on the same path as them, but otherwise, they weren't putting that info out in the public kind of thing.
and I like to think they had stuff to learn from me too, where, we're doing, like, I may be sharing poker strategy, or we're like talking. And so there's this collaborative effort of back and forth where, you're learning from each other. And I think that makes everybody better. So it's good stuff.
Yeah, I think there's an amazing thing too when we kind of get past those initial stages where we're not sure, we got to feel people out, got to decide if we can trust them, what we can share. And eventually, like when you're just friends with people and you're just cool with people and comfortable with people, suddenly you can fully be yourself, you can share everything you have to offer, and they feel they can do the same. And that's when that synergy and that massive growth really comes into the picture. And I feel like that's one of the benefits that, only comes when you actually go and spend time with people face to face in person, like do these experiences beyond just chatting in a forum or chatting on an instant messaging program, and really, share life experience.
Yeah, like there's no way that I would have had any of the growth or success or knowledge I would have had if I didn't fully commit to the lifestyle and connecting with these people in person. It's really all about who you know. Even in an individual game like poker, where you're like, oh, I could just do this on my own and play poker. Like I'm so convinced there's absolutely no chance I would have made it where I was if I didn't literally live with the people that I mentioned, and many more, and travel around to live events and connect with people. And like all the things I got to do in person were so defining for me. And that was really important. And I actually did go out of my way to like connect with other people in the poker industry. So for example, one of the guys that ended up living with me, we actually were roommates years later. We became very close friends. Um, I met him playing poker on a table, right? So we played against each other in like a 2-4 cash game.
Yeah.
We probably started talking because we were just talking trash to each other, because that's what you do when you're 18 playing online poker.
Yeah.
And then we exchanged screen names. We started talking on AOL Instant Messenger. And then we started sharing strategy because it was like, oh, hey, I played this hand. What do you think? And then we just kind of became friends. And then when I went out to Australia, like he had dropped out of college too. And it was like, hey, you want to come out to Australia and meet me and like stay with me and my other friend for 3 weeks. And so he literally showed up on my doorstep in Australia. I had never been to Australia before. This was before the like internet smartphone era. So like I literally, he sent me a picture of him on AIM, and I gave him an address of an apartment in Sydney, which I've never been to. I had no idea like about anything. And literally we both showed up on the same day at the same time. And then we ended up living together and traveling the world together for like 5 years after that. But that's like a real story that happened from like a guy that I had literally never met before. He's from Chicago. And like we were playing together at a 2-4 cash game on Party Poker. And then we ended up having that experience together. Like, and him and another friend of mine, we all lived together and traveled together and grew up in poker together. And then we made each other a lot better. I actually learned quite a bit about poker from him too, because he was always studying and very far ahead of the curve. Very smart guy. So, I mean, there's some crazy stories like that too, where I just would do these random things and then have these random experiences, but then I made great friends because of it. You know, the internet is crazy.
Yeah. And I know like myself, I had the most growth when I lived with other poker players. And I
Totally.
limited myself in a lot of ways because I was very shy. I was very insecure about a lot of things. So I didn't go for it. I didn't put myself out there as much until I was kind of forced to. So I'm kind of curious, for, the younger me and the younger me's out there. How did you develop this mindset and this willingness to just be free and just go for it and get out there and, you know, have trust and faith that it's just all going to work out?
I actually don't think this is probably slightly frustrating answer, but I actually don't think that this is anything I could really take credit for, and that it's just something that I think I was given by mainly my mom, that instilled an extreme amount of like just confidence and um like just the ability to not care about what other people think or be concerned about the judgment and opinion of others. So like for example, I read like just a trivial example of how this sort of happened was like growing up, you know, she always told me you can do whatever you want, you can be whatever you want, don't care about what other people think. But like I would read, she put this little plaque next to my bed and it said, I am the only unique me that will ever be. I have the power to make a difference in this world. And like I would read that every night and she'd be like, you know, read this. And so like I just think that's something that I was just instilled, that sort of thing from a young age. And I just never really cared about that. Like I had the confidence in high school to like drop out of football and go join musical theater. And like obviously everyone thought I was gay or that I was crazy or that this was stupid or that, you know what I mean? You get all those,
Yep.
that ridicule.
Yep.
But like that was just kind of how I see the world, largely because of how I grew up. And then when I coupled that with, again, this was a hand I was dealt. This had nothing to do with any merit of my own. Not that it's even a merit. It's just about being self-aware. Like I'm just an extreme extrovert, so I get my energy from other people. For example, even to this day, I would much rather work in a coffee shop or talk on the phone with someone to relax than to like read a book or stay at home. So like that's just where I get my energy. And so you couple that with being, you know, you're dealt that hand, and then you're also instilled this level of security with yourself and self-confidence that came straight from my mother. It's just a, you know, that's just one of the strengths that you have in life. I mean, I have many weaknesses. I have many things that I'm very terrible at and many flaws, but that's not one of them. And so like, I just kind of played that. Like, I think in life you have to play to your strengths, right? So I was very aware that like, okay, I'm trying to make this practical, because if you're like, oh, well, I'm not dealt that hand, what do I do? So I try to make it practical in the sense that like, I think to get ahead in anything in life, you really have to double down on your strengths and not worry as much about your weaknesses. So I knew that, like, okay, if I'm going to succeed at poker, and maybe I didn't know this intuitively at the time because I probably wasn't as, methodical or self-aware, but it just seemed obvious to me that, like, what I'm going to be good at, or how I'm going to learn, how I interpret the world, is I experience things in person with other people. So I, like, just naturally sort of built community and network and people around me in poker that were very good, and I just connected with them and hung out with them and spent time with them because that was, like, the skill set that I had, and so that was, like, that was just came naturally to me. And so I think everyone in poker has, in life generally has different skill sets. There's people that are very intuitive that don't study math, and that they still win at poker because they very well understand psychology and people, and they play to those strengths. Then there's other people that strictly focus on game theory and math, and they don't even look at their opponents, but they just are so good at the numbers that they win at poker. And so it's really important about understanding, being self-aware and understanding, like, where your strengths are, and then playing your hand to that. And I think this was one of my strengths, and so that very naturally to me in poker and in life as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's really good advice you're giving about the importance of people playing to their strengths, and at the same time, like, not being too concerned if they don't have the strengths that they think are supposed to be important, or that society and mainstream push to be important, because any skills that someone have when developed to a really high level are very valuable in certain environments.
Yeah, like, I think society values or pushes people towards extroversion more
Yeah.
because it's like, oh, communicate your message, talk, give speeches, whatever. But if you're an introvert, you can start a blog. You don't have to start a podcast. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter, right? You can still communicate through a medium that suits your personality. And
Yep.
so, like, there's still ways to, like, just play to your strengths, right? Like, if you're super introverted, whatever, you're probably not going to start a YouTube show, but you can start a blog. Like, I'd rather have a podcast than a blog, but that's just me. It doesn't
Mhm.
make that medium better. But I do think the bottleneck to a lot of people, just going back to that, is really, like, people care. Like, one of the things that I think a lot of people, like, would benefit from overcoming is just, like, the concern with what other people think.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that, like, I see a lot of people that are like, oh, I have this thing I want to do, or this business I want to start, or this idea I want to pursue. And then when you really scratch away at the surface and get to the underlying reasons about why they're not actually doing that, or going forward with that activity, it comes down to their fear of the judgment of other people is more important to them than their own desires.
Yeah.
So the opinions of what other people think have more weight on their decision making than their own personal desires. And that friction, I feel like, is a disaster, because you're putting the interests of people you don't know, or the people that are around you, or the people that are going to judge you on social media, higher
Mhm.
than your own desires. And that's, I feel like, a recipe for unhappiness. So I think getting to a place where you're more confident in your own desires and opinions for what you want, and you place those on a pedestal above the judgment or opinion of other people, is quite important to taking action on things that you want to do with your life.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, like, a great example of that is this conversation. This conversation probably should have happened a year ago, 2 years ago. At the time, I wasn't feeling the very best about
Yeah,
myself. I
that's
wasn't
at
in the
least
best of
equally my
health.
fault.
Yeah, and I was
So
like, oh, well, what are people going to think if I don't look as good on video as I did 3 years ago, 4 years ago? I can't go on there when I'm not looking my best, or if it doesn't look perfect. Meanwhile, the most important thing is getting the message out there. The most important thing is getting the words out there and getting the connection, getting you exposed to my audience, and, like, your audience finding out about who I am as well, because there's a lot of stuff that we have a similar message that people are going to resonate with, and to not share that message is doing a disservice to everyone who's supposed to hear it. And
yeah,
I think that one of the things I heard you mention, because at first you're like, oh, my mother kind of gave me this affirmation, I was just kind of given it. But I think that if anyone put that message, in their bedroom, above their bed, or on the bathroom mirror, on the kitchen table, where they're going to see it first thing in the morning, And last thing before they go to bed, when they're kind of most programmable and most suggestible, that um, what I feel in my heart matters more than what other people think about me. And they expose themselves to that message every day
Yeah.
for 30 days, that would break through. Because if they're waking up and thinking that first thing and they're going to bed dreaming about that, those activities and messages and dreams that really matter to them are going to come to the surface. They're going to be like, right, I need to do that. Because instead of hearing the voice like, you're not good enough, you can't do that, the first voice they're hearing is, not only can you do that, you should do that because it's what you're here to do. And
Yeah.
yeah,
I think there's a lot of truth to that. Like just repeating, like what you put after the sentence, what you put after the phrase "I am" is quite important. So
yeah,
if you say "I am this," like "I am lazy," you're conditioning yourself to think that or believe that. So I think if you could kind of yeah, I know you could kind of like condition yourself to be a certain way, right? If you say like, every day, you're tired, right?
yeah,
You're feeling tired, but
yeah,
you jump out of your chair and you say, "I have a ton of energy," and you
yeah,
jump up and you dance and you yell out loud and you run around your house. Like if you do that all the time, you're gonna condition yourself to have more energy, right? Or like anything like that. And I
for
and I
sure.
feel like that's another one where it's like if you like I did repeat that to myself all the time, and then you start, behaving in that way, you start believing it, you start to like embody that belief, you start to
Mhm.
absorb it.
Yeah,
And so I think, what you being conscious of what you put after "I am" is quite important to how you end up behaving, and sometimes it's a lot of times it's subconscious, but
mhm.
like you said, right before bed, yeah,
and
it does
and
take some work though, and the thing is it
for
does
sure,
feel very awkward in the beginning.
for sure.
um, and I've done this with other things where I'm weak at, and I feel like I'm going through the motions. Like, this is stupid, or this is kind of embarrassing, or this is kind of like childish. But if you stick with it for months, I think you'll notice some improvement.
Yeah, I'm actually having an experience with that right now. I'm doing a 8-week Kundalini yoga intensive where the
Cool.
exercises they have us do are just insane. And I get to the point where I'm like, I'm tired. I don't need to do this. This is weird. Is this even going to work? And I say, where's that voice coming from? And I'm like, oh, that's the voice that I would put when I was, 6, 7, 8 years old when I didn't want to have to put in the energy and the effort. And here's my opportunity to not listen to that voice, break through, and show myself that what I used to believe isn't true anymore. It's just amazing how quickly it shifts. And I love what you said about moving around and getting the energy going because a lot of times people are tired. It's because they're resisting, they're clenching, they're giving themselves tension because they're not acting on their dream, and that's stifling them and slowing them down. Whereas if they just do what they want to do or say what they need to say, suddenly they'd relax, they'd flow, and they'd just feel more energy naturally, and it would kind of just have a nice snowball effect from there.
Yeah, you have a lot of energy when you're excited about what's going on in your life. You
Yeah,
just have more energy for things in general. So
yeah,
I
like
find that like when I'm feeling lethargic, it's a lot of times. Obviously, if you're eating poor foods and you're not hydrated and you're not exercising, you're not sleeping, you're gonna feel tired, right? You're not gonna like overcome biology. But in general, if I'm feeling more excited on like an underlying level and like I have more energy on an underlying level, it's generally because I'm excited about getting up early the next morning because I know cool things are happening in my life.
yeah,
And that's a great metric to measure what I'm doing. I always say like if you're excited about getting up early the next couple days, you're probably doing something with your time that's worth pursuing. And if you're not, if you're like, I just want to sleep in, I don't really care. I mean, obviously, occasionally sleeping in, fine. You should enjoy life and sleep in. But
yes.
like in general, if you're like apathetic towards the next week or two of your life, like that's a good time to reflect about where things are going.
Yeah.
I try and do that often because running, going on your own path, running your own business, doing things on your own, it's easy to kind of get sidetracked and then lose perspective or sight of the big picture.
Yeah, so talking about running your own business and going on your own path, I know that you were doing some coaching in addition to poker at first, but what made you decide to start a YouTube channel? And was it like 2014, 2000? Because 2015 you really started popping off and blowing up, I remember. So
Yeah.
yeah, what led you to do that?
Good question. So well, there's two things there. One's the coaching, which we'll come back to it later. But
Mhm.
the YouTube was basically just like I said. I am an extrovert. I love
Yeah.
like talking and sharing things, and teaching things is great too. And at that point, I'd been in poker, for almost a decade, basically. And so more than that, I've been a professional for a decade, but I really felt like I learned a lot on my journey. And I got to the point where, playing poker wasn't as fulfilling anymore.
Mhm.
Because at some point you're kind of like a hamster on a wheel, like winning more or accomplishing another thing. Just, it doesn't, it stops having the fulfillment that it had originally. And so I felt like I did a lot in poker that I wanted to do. And at that point, I was like, I would really like to share things and connect with others and help people on their journey. And so I'm like, well, let me, just produce a video or two and share it and see what happens. And so I started with that idea. I never really planned on building a business on the back end of it. I never, like, that all came so much later when I just had a big following and people started asking me, hey, do you offer coaching? Or hey, I really like your hand of the day videos. I just started sharing hands I played around the world. So if you look at my early videos, I would be in a different city all the time.
Yep.
And I would go to a cool location and I would just film a hand. I would talk about a hand I played. And so the people like started to like the strategy and they're like, oh, do you have a book or do you have a course or a product? And then I was like, oh, well, I'm still playing a lot of poker, but I want to get more involved in the business side of things. Let me build those things to serve that need. So that kind of just came organically. But originally it was always just about connecting with others, sharing things I've learned, and mainly like lessons I've learned in poker that apply towards life as well, was really a compelling thing for me to share. It was a driving factor in starting my YouTube, because I felt like poker was a great teacher for life. And there were so many parallels between the way I saw the world, the way I made decisions at the poker table.
Mhm.
And I felt like a lot of those things gave me an edge in terms of evaluating things in business, like being analytical and thinking about, which variables actually account for more sales. And like
Mhm.
poker teaches you to do that, to understand, like, was it luck that was the result of me winning this hand, or was it because I made a correct decision at some point in the hand? And where was that correct decision? And how can I replicate? And then in the case of business, like sort of replicate and scale that. There's just a lot of things that crossed between business and life. Also just in life, like, not um, like judging situation based on the outcome, right? So you can say like, oh, it was so stupid to leave that party and go home early because I got a ticket. And it's like, well, no, leaving the party was a good decision. Getting a ticket was a random outcome that happened that had nothing to do with leaving the party. But like, people confuse these things all the time, and that's kind of a trivial example. But they sort of equate outcome to merit of decision, whereas poker teaches you not to do that. It teaches you to evaluate each thing independently. Those are things that I find myself like very um, often utilizing in the real world. And so I wanted to build a brand and create a YouTube to share like those sorts of things. But somewhere along the way, quickly, the hand of the day really caught on and people loved the poker strategy side of things. And so I kind of went more all in on that. And I've been doing a mixture of that and like, life lessons as well. And I actually opened a second YouTube recently to share strictly non-poker related content, like
Mhm.
lessons I learned in poker that are, apply to life, but it's non-poker strategy related, because I want to build that message out more as well.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I got to give you a lot of credit, man, because a lot of people who are coming onto YouTube now and watching the content now probably aren't aware of it. But I know from watching the whole timeline and the growth of like poker on YouTube that you were the guy that started single hand history reviews. You were the guy that
Yeah,
started the hand of the day. Like you brought that format to YouTube.
thanks for
I
that.
remember when you were doing like poker hand replays and like it didn't
Yeah,
matter how it looked because it was just really good information. Now everyone's doing it, but like you were the guy who started that for sure.
thank you. Yeah, that is true. That's how largely the brand got built.
Yeah.
Nobody was doing that before, and I was like, this would be great, and people loved it. But yeah, now it's everywhere, and obviously the production value has gotten so much better. I mean, on our channel as well, but
Yeah.
on all the channels,
Yeah.
there's live footage. I mean, that wasn't a thing. And there's like, freeze frames and all this stuff where, like the editors have gotten better and like, the production values increased a lot. Whereas before it was just like me on an iPhone,
Yep.
in the countryside of Switzerland shooting a hand and like just talking about, this hand. Half the time there wasn't even a replayer. Some of the time there wasn't even a replayer.
Yeah.
I remember when we got the replayer, I was like, wow, this is revolutionary. And that was an old crappy replayer that was so bad. But yeah, those were good times. But you were on, speaking of YouTube pioneers, you were on YouTube, I think like before anyone was even on YouTube in poker. So let alone the hand of the day. Yeah, dude, how did you get started on YouTube? Like, how did you know to get into YouTube? Like literally like 10, 15 years ago. That's crazy.
Yeah, well, I have to give credit to, the people that I was working with who saw the opportunity that I didn't, because I was a poker player, and I was also an affiliate marketer. So like yourself, I was a very successful affiliate marketer. Like the reason that I got the website grips.com was because, dude, I was sitting on my front porch with my buddy from high school. We were just talking like wiggers because we were listening to hip hop and we thought we were cool like that. And he's mentioned something about he was going to go grip something. And I'm like, "Oh, grips." Yeah, and like past tense that would be like grips. So like you got that as grips. You know what? I'm going to make my new screen name grips.com just for fun. I'm just going to do that. So I made the screen name and I'm like, "Well, if my screen name has a .com in it, I might as well buy the website." And then when I bought the website, I knew nothing about internet or like web pages, but I knew how to upload a text file. So I uploaded a text file that explained rakeback and why the particular site I was working for had the best rakeback deal of the ones available.
Cool.
And from there, I'm like, well, this is working. People are signing up, but I can't just have a text file up there. That looks really hack. So I started reaching out to web developers saying, hey, can we build a website here? Can we do something? And the thought was, back then it was all rev share. So the more that people played, the more the affiliate would make. And I said, well, if I need people to play more, I've got to teach them how to play better. That's going to be the key for success. So I was watching all the training videos out there and I knew there was the Card Runners, Deuces Cracked. I think Blue Fire Poker had just come out and I'm like, they're great videos, but no one has a structured...
that was back in the day, man. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, but no one had a structured course. So I said, all right, I'm going to do my best to teach people how to play poker in, 2 to 3 hours. And so I made the first course. It was a free course that just broke down how poker works with the importance of going after the blinds and antes, bankroll management, pre-flop play, position, aggression, selection, post-flop, adjusting to opponents, and all those things. And I'm like, great, I've got this course. Now what do I do with it? And the web guy said, put it on YouTube. And I'm like, really? Like, I put a lot of work into this. We're just going to give it away? He's like, yeah, just put it on YouTube. It'll work out. And that's how the channel got started. And it was kind of just slow for a while. That was in 2008. I just put those up. But because the titles were good and the topics were good, and no one else had poker themed videos. If you searched how to win at poker, how to make money, poker strategy, you were finding my videos and the information in them was great. The production quality, whatever, it was 2008, but the information was great and it worked. And then it was the same thing for Twitch. After Greggy won the main event, and he moved away and I was just like, okay, what do I do now? My roommate just left. I'm off this crazy high. How can I replicate that high? I don't want to play cash because it's not going to be as exciting. So I asked my web guy, what do I do? And he said, start streaming on Twitch. Just start streaming on Twitch, stream daily, and it'll work out. And it was the same thing. I got there before, it was right when Jay Carver started. And that really worked. I got in front of a new audience, got a lot of growth, got a lot of expansion. The one thing was, because I wasn't super extroverted and I wasn't super social, I was more of a intellect, a theory-based person, which is why I liked PowerPoint presentations. Twitch didn't quite work for me. And so it really burnt me out. And I'm like, okay, this isn't my format. I love the game, but I teach best when I'm, going from a presentation, like I'm running a seminar or something.
Yeah.
So it helped me find my style, but I found that I loved YouTube because I could take anyone's question. You had Ask ALEC, I had Project Get Me Stacking, where they could send in a question, but it wasn't like, oh, I got to figure out on the fly how to answer. I'm like, I can take my time, make a
Yeah.
presentation, and then give them the presentation that's well thought out with the answer. And I can communicate the thought and help them kind of settle their mind and get a clear course of action to take to find a solution to their problem. And that's on a deep level, that's what I've always been. I came from a home with a lot of stressed out people, so I had to kind of figure out how to make things okay. And the way to do that was to give people something they could do that was simple, that eased the stress and got them the result they wanted. And then just,
Cool. I like that.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's also about, like you said, knowing what your strengths are and
yeah,
knowing like how you can communicate in a way that's natural to you and then effective to the others.
yeah. I also found that one thing was really good, and I kind of want to ask if you had the same experience with Hand of the Day, was that as I was teaching the stuff, it was making more sense to me. And I would like make a
Totally.
presentation and I'd explain the stuff, and then halfway through the presentation, I'd be like, oh, I just learned something new right there. And right
Yeah.
there, and like my brain started firing where I'm like, wow, here is a way to study that I'm getting the best benefit ever. And if I didn't have this accountability from YouTube, I wouldn't be doing the studying. I wouldn't be doing the homework. So it became something that started to serve me in a way that I didn't even expect. And then I just got hooked on. I'm like, why would I ever stop? This is serving
Yeah.
me and serving other people. I'm being valuable. I'm getting friends. I'm getting connected. Like it was just an amazing feeling of what YouTube did. It allowed me to put myself out there without feeling my insecurities that I would feel normally from being in a big crowd or being overwhelmed from too many people. Yeah.
Totally. And I had a very similar experience. And I get this question a lot where people are like, why would you teach others to get better and it's going to hurt you? They're going to come play better against you. And I'm like, man, the value I've got from teaching is so much like higher than any risk of like people getting better or playing better against me. Like it's not even comparable.
Yeah.
For example, one of the pillars that at Conscious Poker we teach is a like linear 4-step process for making decisions, right? Because
Hmm.
people are always like struggle with this sort of deer in headlights type of um, mindset where like they get involved in a hand and they're like, I'm overwhelmed. What do I think about? Or I just blank out on the river in big pots. Um, or I'm faced with a huge decision and now I'm like, there's so many variables to consider. How do I like in a linear way think through the hand and figure out what they have? So
Hmm.
like I got this question from so many readers and people that I was coaching that I like through explaining my thought process, I had to get better at understanding my own thought process. Cause I like it's easy to intuitively know how you do something. It's harder to actually communicate that in a way that someone else can then apply, not just understand, but actually apply to their own game.
Hmm.
So over the course of a couple lessons with one of my clients or a couple of my clients, I would start to explain exactly what I thought every single hand. And I was like, this is my thought process, not just like what I'm thinking about in this particular hand, but this is the thought process that I use that I apply to every hand. Like, this is my system, this is my blueprint.
Yeah.
And so I condensed that down into 4 steps where I'm like, this is exactly what I do. Like, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And I ended up being inspired to put that into a product because like so many people asked me about it. We put it into a book and eventually it just got to the point where like I was teaching the same thing all the time to my private clients and whatever, that I made a blog post about it and it's now free at Conscious Poker. It's called Mastering the Art of Hand Reading. And it's literally, an overview of that 4-step process
Hmm.
that I use for hand reading. And then of course there's like an entire course I built on that inside our membership where I have a video course on that very process. But like this became like so much more clear to me that this is what I actually do in every single hand I play. And I'm like, wow, like this is how I think about a hand. And before it was just something that happened automatically, subconsciously, but now it's actually clear and conscious where I'm like, I know exactly what I think every single hand. So now sometimes I fall victim to like, there's high pressure. I'm in a tough situation. What do I do? And then now I'm like, well, let me go back to this linear thought process that I created. And this is what I actually do. Let me just follow this. So I could like treat myself like a dummy. It's kind of like scheduling out your day before you have your day. You just kind of follow the schedule you already set for yourself. Right. And I have that with my own thought process. And so I would never have been aware of that had I not been forced to teach it to other people in my private coaching or whatever. And the same happens on a micro level when I review these other people's hands. Like they send me their hands And then I go into the lab, I go into Poker Cruncher and I analyze the hand and I'm like, oh, wow, this is actually a better way to play this hand. And I just got, better as a player because I'm like, learning how to explain everything to other people. So it's been incredible. I've become so much better because of coaching, and I really love it for that.
Yeah, and that's a really great segue you brought us on. We're going to circle back to the good life, which was the original plan. But I mean, you got us straight to conscious
Sure,
poker.
whatever.
So I remember when you first launched four-step poker, and I remember going to the website and being like, okay, he's got like a $500 course, like must be really good if it's $500. And I didn't know exactly about your background, but we have that one mutual friend. And I just knew that you played cash in Macau, and I knew you'd been around the scene forever. I'm like, ALEC is definitely very good. I have no idea what's in that program, but it's probably very good if it's coming from him. And I know there was an evolution along the way. So can you talk about how conscious poker evolved, or how four-step poker evolved into conscious poker, and why you felt you needed to make the shift, and what got added as a result?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I originally thought of four-step poker because I was like, okay, this is the methodology that I use to teach, right? Like this is like generally the core of like how I explain poker strategy to other people. Like follow this process, and you can obviously learn how to tweak it and all that stuff. But like this is kind of like the blueprint that I think works really well, and I've had a lot of success with clients that have used it, and it's a good thing to fall back on of like, this is how to approach the game. So I just, without much creativity, sort of called the brand that, and I just called the product that, and that was just like, this is what it is, and so a couple of years ago, I started to think more about like what I actually wanted to build, and like what was inspiring me about creating content, and actually having, at some point, like the business was going well. People were buying courses and products and coaching, and I actually like kind of woke up and I actually had, a poker sort of business, and I was like, wow, like now I have like things to manage. I have customers, I have emails, I have like things coming in, and I'm like really wanting to build a brand, but I want to do it more than just have a brand that has the name of the strategy I teach, but that also has like kind of a mission behind it, and something that I'm passionate about, and that hopefully can do, a little bit more than just teach poker strategy. So I wanted to call it Conscious Poker because, and that name kind of just evolved out of this sort of process I was going through in life, where I was like thinking about, what was really meaningful to me. And it was at a unique time in my life where I was really thinking about, I was really aware of just like the role of luck in life, and how lucky I was to be. I gave a keynote about this too, so that kind of forced me to condense these thoughts, like we talked about with coaching. I was asked to do a keynote for Cisco, and also for a marketing conference in real estate. And so one of the things that I was talking about was like one of the lessons I learned from poker. And I was like, okay, well, what did poker really teach me? Like I only have 30 minutes, right? Like I could pick 10 things that poker taught me, maybe more. Like I talk about anything from, decision making to bankroll management to whatever. But then I was thinking, like, what's the one message I'd like to be, I don't want to say remembered for, hopefully I'll have other keynotes, but like, what's the one thing I'd like people to see? So then I thought, like, wow, the thing that I really realized in poker is that there's a large amount of luck in poker, and there's a large amount of luck in life. And it's something that's completely beyond our control, right? Like you can't control the hand you're dealt. You could only control how you play the cards. And that was really the theme of what I was thinking a lot about at that time in my life. And I was like, wow, if you think about the hand you're dealt in life as a metaphor, like I would wager that everyone listening to this was dealt a winning hand. Like your hand might not be as good as someone else's, but it's still like a premium hand. It's still like pocket tens or better, right? Like half the world, right? Like just look at the numbers. Like half the world lives on 250 a day or less. So that means, 50-50, right? Like you're all in with jacks, they have ace king. Like that could be you, right? Like before, and you have no control over this, right? So before you're born, the universe like flips a coin, and if it's heads, you're born in the first world, worrying about the long line at the coffee shop and what you're gonna, like whatever, right? Your morning routine and all these first world problems that really don't matter in the grand scheme of things. Or if it's tails, you're born in the third world and you're living on 250 a day, and you're stricken with poverty and disease, and you can't get out of that situation. And that's just luck. That's the hand you're dealt. And so I was trying to convey this message to other people, and then I realized, like, wow, that's the core of like what I think poker teaches you, is that like there's so much luck in life, and it's arguably the most important thing to happen to us is that we're dealt a winning hand, but it's the thing that we most often take for granted. And so I wanted that to be like the larger message of what I personally was trying to teach within the industry of poker, and using poker as a vehicle to help other people see this in their own life, that like they were born lucky, and to be grateful for that every day. And then sure, focus on how to play the hand the best way possible. And I talk about my decision-making process in poker that I think applies to life, using like, logic to make decisions and those sorts of things, and the relationship between intuitive decision-making and logical decision-making that also you have to use in poker. But I wanted that to be like really my core message, is people to be more grateful for the amount of luck they had in their life, because it's really easy to see in poker that luck changes all the time. And it could be easily you that's on the shitty side of a bad beat. That could happen to you in life too. And that's something that you don't get to run twice. You don't get to run your life twice. Like if you're born in Africa where like people are dying of AIDS, like you don't get to run it twice. You're just fucked, And so the fact that you weren't born there means you've already won. Like there is nothing that could happen at the poker table that could change the fact that you're running ahead of the curve in terms of luck. And so I wanted to make people more conscious of this. And so I was like, okay, well, conscious poker seems like it has a good ring to it. And that's kind of more of the larger purpose and message of my brand. One of the things we did is partnered with Reg Charity to give back to people that weren't dealt the winning hand in life. Like, right, when you're aware of that, I felt compelled to be like, okay, well, let's take part of the money that comes in and donate to people that just were dealt shitty hands. And so that was like a larger reason for changing the brand and creating a mission behind it. And I felt compelled to do that as an influencer in the space, and also someone that actually realized like, okay, now I have a business, I have customers, I have people that are coming to me and whatever, like, where do I want to take this? So that was largely the motivation behind it. And I mean, as for the products, that's almost like not as important, so to speak. Yeah. But what we did create is what I realized that everybody wanted was a community and like a way to connect with other people. Because they didn't have people they could learn from. They weren't fortunate like you and I to come up with, Greg and Tom and, people that we came up and got better and learned poker with. So I wanted that to be the foundation for what we created at Conscious Poker. And so we built a membership where people have like a monthly group call with me. And so like I host these like monthly strategy calls, and everybody gets on together and we review hands and I answer questions, and it's interactive. And then we have a private Facebook group that's moderated by myself and a coach, where they post hands and we answer, and everybody gets a response. Everybody gets their questions answered. And so we created that community feel as the backbone of the service that we offered through the brand to help people on their poker journey to really have that support.
That's awesome. I agree with you completely that the most important thing is community and is having support, like especially in poker where there's so much uncertainty and where humans in general feel pretty uncomfortable with uncertainty, and it can drive them insane to just like not know the answers to things. Like that keeps a lot of people up at night. That just being able to get a second or a third or a fourth opinion on a situation to kind of give it closure. Like, hey, did I make a mistake, or was this mistake horrible? Or is it kind of okay? That really helps people settle a lot and settle a lot of the nerves and a lot of the anxiety that poker kind of stirs up. And I feel like, community is the only way we can really get that.
Yeah. And like, I noticed that that's my behavior now. Like, let's say, okay, I busted out of the main. Let me send the hand I busted to 3 or 4 friends, and just having them say, okay, that's fine, really goes a long way. So like, even if it's just something like that, like a positive reinforcement, or I have a question about something, I do that with my little pod of, high stakes friends that play poker. So like, I'm like, I want to create that for other people. And then they have they just pop in their Facebook group, drop a question like, hey, I'm going on a downswing. I've played this many sessions. These are my results. Is this normal? And just having, me or another coach or someone in the community come in and say, oh yeah, we've gone through that before. It's totally normal. Make these adjustments. This is what worked for me. Go back out and, go on your journey and crush it on your next session, or doing that in a live call where they can just like pop in, ask a question, and then we can have a chat in real time. Does go a long way. Of course, there's the strategy component, and there's the videos and the courses and the thing that actually help them be better at poker to increase their win rate. But it's gone a long way, and people that have been in it for a while love that aspect of it, and I think that's what we're trying to grow and focus on.
Yeah. Okay, so you do also have some other coaches with the brand? Because from what I'd seen, like kind of up until now, at least, like it's been all you. And I was gonna ask why you decided to just kind of spearhead it and keep it as a lone wolf project, or have you had a bit of expansion as well?
So we have one other coach that does moderate the Facebook group. Yeah. And so he gives feedback on all the hands. I also moderate the Facebook group, and I'd like to say I respond to every thread. I might miss one or two here and there, but I pretty much, at least up to this point, respond to every thread. He responds to every thread too. That just gives a second pair of eyes and opinion in there. And he's a cash game pro. He's been, crushing the 1-3-2-5 up to 5-10 cash games for 10 years. And it's great to have that perspective because he's actually in the streets playing the games that the people that are the members are playing. So he has like a different perspective than I might have, that's like actually understands the flow of those sorts of games in that way. And he's also great at all the other stuff, like the mindset, the bankroll management, all those sorts of things. He's an A player. But I've thought about building a brand behind it and getting other coaches to either create courses for the membership or standalone courses for Conscious Poker, or maybe host the group calls. I want to be very careful about the partnerships that I set up and think more about where I want the brand to go. I do have some milestones I want to achieve before I bring on someone. And I also have to think about the structure of the deal that they would have. And there's a lot of moving pieces to having someone. And it's kind of like one of those things that it's like having a kid. There's really, there's no going back. You don't want to bring someone on board and structure a deal and go through all that work and then have them build 10 and courses, whatever. And then, like not have a clear direction for your brand and what you're trying to do ultimately. And then like they stop producing content or something like that. You have to have a very clear long-term strategy. And so I want to build the brand up more on my own before I do that. That said, it is in the works. I have some potential people in mind. It would be exciting to do something like that. And I do eventually see myself moving out of the content creation space for the membership and kind of turning that over to other coaches. Also getting coaches under me, because I can't take on many more clients than I already have. I can't really, I'm not looking to like coach full time. I only work with 2 or 3 or 4 clients a month, and I've had more inquiries than that. So some of the people are asking me, well, do you have a sub coach under you that and you can that you've worked with that can teach these sorts of things? So those things have come up organically in terms of the need for the brand, but I so far haven't done it. But it is potentially in the pipeline, and it is compelling, exciting to potentially think about that as growth for the brand as well.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because when it's just it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier for the brand to be very mobile. You can make changes, you can kind of flow with it and control it how you want. And I just feel like it's easier to schedule when it's just you, because you can count on yourself. You don't have to deal with any back and forth. And as soon as you bring other people on, now you go from being a content creator and a visionary and a teacher
business manager
to a manager.
Yeah, you're like a
yeah. And like,
it's like I'd almost want a partner to do the operations of like, managing this and then building out the team on the back end of that. And like, I just oversee the vision and the strategy, because managing that on a day-to-day basis and coordinating with them, and then you have to have deadlines. Like, there's just so many moving parts that I think in the beginning I thought, oh, I'm going to do that for sure. But then when I started to get into the weeds of building the brand and the business and like seeing how much work was involved, and all the moving parts. I mean, we already at Conscious Poker, we already have a team of like 5 people that I'm interacting with pretty regularly, and we're bringing on one more person this month. So it's like it's already a lot to manage, and then managing a whole team of content creators. It's just overwhelming. I already am doing a lot of jobs at once anyway. So, yeah, it is appealing, but it is completely a different step for the brand and the business. So we'll see.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of ask how you keep up with it, because you're very active on Twitter, you're very active on Instagram. I went through the profile. I saw you've been posting like epic travel pics since I don't even know how far back. You've got videos on YouTube coming out like almost every day, it seems like. Sometimes it's a couple times a week, but you're always there. You're always consistent. And I think we probably hit on it before with, you being excited about what's coming out the next day and building up the vision and working towards that. But still, how do you find the energy to consistently do that, to manage 5 people and not ever get burnt out?
So I'm not like necessarily proud of this, but I went staying with my mom here in Orange County, and we have a pool in the backyard that I went in all the time when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And I loved it. Like, some of my best memories are in the pool with friends. And I've been with my wife for 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously she's been to my parents' house many times. Every summer we're here after the World Series. And a week ago was the first time we went in the pool. Like, we would always look at the pool and we're like there and whatever, but we never went in the pool. And yes, like we went in the pool last week, and I was like, wow, like we never do this sort of thing. And so all this is to say, again, this is not something I'm proud of, but like a very naturally like A-type personality. And one of the hardest things for me is to detach from what I'm doing. Like, I think it's not necessarily binary, but typically people are there's always something they have to manage with the balance. And there's nothing inherently better about one versus the other, but typically people, underwork, where they're a little lazy or apathetic, and they have to kind of get kicked in the ass all the time to get shit done, or they overwork and they do a lot and they have to kind of like consciously tone things down to find things they do to detach and balance. And I'm definitely the latter. Like, I'm always plugged in. Like, I usually am doing something 7 days a week. And that's just been something I've had to like, that's just a challenge for me to like not think about work, not think about a project I'm doing, and to force myself to like go on vacation. And then while I'm on vacation, I have to force myself to not check in as much or read, not absorb content. So I'll literally block out everything. I won't absorb any content, or I'll read a novel about France instead of a business book. And so like, it's been just a challenge for me throughout my life, where I'm like very active and doing a lot. And so I always like to be busy every moment and stimulated and like always producing and creating. And so it's actually just my default operating mode, that I'm like doing a lot of things and juggling a lot of things and managing a lot of projects. And while on one hand, it's allowed me to be, successful, so to speak, by the standard definition in business, it's also been like something that I've had to like, work with to find balance with as well. So yeah, it's like a double-edged sword, like I do produce a lot and I do a lot and I'm very active. Like I said, I manage the 5 people. I have 2 YouTubes. I have a newsletter that goes out every Monday. I post all the time on social media. Yeah. I have the membership I create a video for every week. So I'm probably doing like 15 videos a month, plus a coaching call and 4 clients. But at the same time, I'm also like, I go in my pool once every decade. So I do have to find more balance in these sorts of things. And that's something that I'm definitely getting better at with in the last couple of years. I've gotten a lot better, but it's always something I have to check in with. I'd say the last sort of thing that I'm good at is I'm very efficient with creating systems. So like, I'm good at sort of like optimizing time. So I think I can get a lot done in a shorter amount of time, because I'm like the systems of the business run very well, and I have like one person that specializes in everything, and they're all very good A players, so they all do their jobs very well, and they allow me to just focus on creating the content. And so that helps me leverage my time to be impactful. When I only have a couple hours to get something done on a certain day, I can get a lot done in those few hours. So it might seem on the surface like more is happening than it is, because I'm like efficient in that way. So that's also, there's again, part of the one of the other skills I have. I know I've only talked about my skills. Believe me, I have many flaws, but that's another skill that I have. And so that's allowed me to be, very efficient in a 2 or 3 hour block of work, where I can get 4 hours or 5 hours of work done.
Yeah. One thing that my holistic life coach teacher Paul Check taught me, for A-type personalities, I'm very much like that too. I want to achieve as much as I can, get as much output as I can, so when I look back, I can feel accomplished and feel proud of all the things that I did in a day. He talked about the importance of both scheduling spiritual
Yeah.
time, whether it's yoga and a movement practice, or a seated meditation practice, or just listening to music, going for a walk in the woods, and scheduling, putting things in your schedule that are for you. So if people are like, hey, are you available at this time? You're like, no, I have a date with myself. And what am I doing? I'm just being with me. And the other thing he suggested, that the older I got, the more I realized was true, and the more I was producing stuff, the more I realized was true, was the importance of scheduling a full day off a week. You know how a lot of religions have Sundays the day of rest, and now I understand it, that when we drop that and we don't follow that, if we don't follow a religion or whatever, and we don't have that day of rest, we're in trouble. But if we
Yeah.
can give ourselves that day of rest to be like, okay, this is the day that I go to the beach, swim in the pool.
Yeah, I've been doing that too. And it's crazy what one day, I would used to not have that one day. It's crazy what one day does.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, one day, I'm like, wow, one day is so much.
Yeah. And that one day, it's
Yeah,
like you have fun and you enjoy yourself, but it also, all the things that were kind of uncertain during the week, or that you were processing, now they can be digested and suddenly like they make sense. I feel like that off time is a
yeah,
chance for things to suddenly fit together, and see how this book and this course and this project, how they all fit together, as opposed to being kind of three blocks of information that, like a Tetris game. At first they're just the pieces as they are, but when you take
I
the
like
time
that.
to stop, you rotate them and suddenly they fit into a nice line, and boom, they can go away, and you have that free space again, plus you got more points.
Yeah, I feel like on a micro level, I'm good at that on a daily basis. So, like every morning, I have, I'd say like an hour of rev up time where like no matter what time I get up, the first hour is like nobody talks to me. Like I just do my thing.
Yeah.
Um, so that's kind of like my morning routine. And then I would say like at night, I'm not as good at it, but usually I'll have like couple time at night, and Amber and I will always find time to do something together. Usually cook and eat, and then like watch a movie or a show, go on a walk. So there's always like a decompressed time that we have as a couple. And then I would say like just throwing in like if I have a particularly busy day, I'll throw in like a 10-minute, even 5 to 15 minutes. I don't really set a timer, but like a meditation session to kind of like transition from the day of intense focus and work to like personal time at night. I feel like that just kind of lets my thoughts like just flow out of my subconscious, and I could just kind of be aware of them. Sometimes I'll, document things or write things down that are ideas that come out of that session, or things that I have to do the next day. And that kind of allows like those, ruminating thoughts that are kind of like just, maybe preventing you from relaxing or calming down or sleeping or whatever it is, or kind of keeping you mentally engaged, to just kind of like flow out. And that really helps me as well. And I've noticed that like if I do that for like 5 minutes, even during the middle of a busy day, I could then just kind of calm down and then refocus again for like 2-3 hours. So that's like a hack that's worked really well for me, where like I could do like intermittent meditation throughout the day for like 5 minutes at a time, 10 minutes at a time. And that could just allow me to keep going and being productive the rest of the day. And then also just decompressing at night. So like throwing those things in there, like you said, obviously like everyone has their own physical practice, whatever that is for you, if it's yoga or the gym or swimming, whatever, those sorts of things are great. And I really try and be disciplined about doing that on a daily basis. And that's one of the ways that I think I don't burn out, because I'm so disciplined about knowing that I need that personal time, even if it's, albeit small, really goes a long way. You know, I could cut down my hour routine in the morning to 30 minutes like I did today. I was short on time, so I divided my meditation and my run in half, but I still did it. And
Yeah.
so even that short, kind of like the 80-20 principle, even if you do, you know, 20% of the effort, it still gives you 80% of the benefit. So even if it's short, it still goes a long way for me at least.
Mhm. So I'm hearing hacks and I'm hearing the importance of the morning routine. Are you Tim Ferriss guy, Tony Robbins guy, Gary V
Well,
guy, any of the above?
yeah, so I'm familiar with all of them. I started following Tim Ferriss in 2005. I
Okay.
read the 4 Hour Work Week, and so I was like one of the first, like, uh, like I read it right when it came out, so I was like adopting his content right away. That had a huge um, impact on the way I saw things because I was like just starting my poker journey, and I really thought about things in a different way in terms of like building a lifestyle and reverse engineering to have your whatever you do for money to give you the lifestyle you want and not the other way around. Not working to get a lifestyle that you don't necessarily want or need just for the sake of doing it. So that really shaped the way I thought about things. Um, but like I would say, I think maybe 5-10 years ago, these sorts of things like these morning routines and productivity hacks and stuff were like a little bit more useful because they were a little bit less saturated in terms of like the content that's being put out. Whereas I feel like now it's become to the point where it's like there's almost this like stigma or pressure around following this precise morning routine or this precise workout or this precise diet or this precise like everything. And if you don't do that, then you're not like as you're not going to be as big of a crusher or whatever. And I feel like it's kind of got blown out of proportion where it's like ultimately, sure, there's merit in doing a lot of the like checking a lot of the boxes that seem like okay, a lot of successful people adopt like exercise, meditation, whatever. But at the same time, I think there's a lot to be said, and it's probably undervoiced at this point in the sort of like entrepreneurship community of like just finding what really works for you, and like sure, experiment with all these things, but then like understand what really works well for you and like what order those things work for your own life. I guess just be your own self experimenter and just try not to put too much pressure on following what someone else does or doing something for the sake of doing it, but actually like adopting practices and routines and and things that ultimately will help you based on your the way you operate. And then also being aware of like that changes on a daily basis, whereas like some days you might not follow your routine because you don't feel like you need to, and that's okay too. Not putting too much pressure on yourself. I feel like there's a lot of that out there today.
Yeah, I agree. Especially in the business world, like people who follow too many productivity gurus are just getting inundated nonstop about all the things they could do to be productive. And especially like in marketing, where people are
Yeah.
saying that, their way is the way and their message is right, and they're communicating what works for them, but they're communicating it so adamantly and so powerfully that people are like, oh, maybe that could be it for me too. And the thing is, when you jump from being intense at yoga to intense at CrossFit to intense at weight training to intense at boxing to intense at triathlon, and you don't stick with one, you don't allow your body to develop and attune to it, and you don't allow your mind to get used to that routine and really get the benefit. And I'm kind of with you that it's good to try them all. And once you're like, okay, this is the one that kind of resonates with me, this is what feels good, this is the style I like, just go with that one and know that it's good enough. There's so much concern about being perfect. There's a lot of fear-based thinking about making mistakes, that if we don't do the absolute best thing, we're doing something wrong. But the thing that feels right for you is probably the best thing. And the more that you
Yeah.
do it, the more it will become the best thing because it's what you are attuned to at a deep level, right? Like if
Yeah, it's
you're,
also understanding what's right in the moment, right?
yeah,
Where like, you're weight training a lot, and then maybe you do that for 6 months, and then maybe your body needs a break, so you get
yes,
more into yoga, and like just not only following something because you've done it in the past and realizing like that might not serve you in the future.
yeah,
So I think I'm like very intuitive with my approach towards things, and so I just kind of like go about life in the day that sort of way. And so some days I'll be like, I feel like I need this, or I need whatever, like I need more time to downtime, or I need to eat more, I'm not as hungry, or like whatever it is, right? Like everything
Yeah.
about that. So I try and operate that way, and that works well for me when I'm checking in often.
Yeah, something I've added that I like, how everyone has the to-do list. One day I wrote one out. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, this is not a to-do list. This is a can-do list. So it's not that I need to check all the boxes, it's that I have the option to check a few of them and I'll feel good. And one productivity program from Eben Pagan told me to write down my perfect productivity day and my perfect relaxation day. And I realize if I write out kind of the 20 things that would fit into the ultimate productivity day and the 20 things that would fit into the ultimate relaxation day, then on any given day, I can say, okay, I want to be more productive. I'll try to check 5 things from that productivity basket and one of the relaxation. And then I know what all my options are, but I also know it's not to do, it's can do. So they're all just options, and I only need to do as many as feel right and never feel like I need to do all of them. I don't have to like figure out like some new thing to do because I'm like, here are the 10 to 20 things that work for me to satisfy this need. I can just kind of choose my own adventure.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah, I like that a lot. That's a great practical tip. And one of my mentors a long time ago told me, I was just having a conversation. I said, oh, I have to do this tomorrow. And they said, do you have to, or are you choosing to? And I just remember that really stuck with me because like we talked about at the beginning, like what you put after the word I am, or I have, or I must, or I need, like that becomes the way that you sort of think about it. So when you tell yourself, I have to do this tomorrow, it becomes a command, whereas I have the option to do this tomorrow becomes a choice. And when you have choices, you're capable of deciding whether or not you want to do that. And so I'm totally with you on the way that you structure these sentences has a huge difference in the way subconsciously that you interpret something. People are like, oh, I have a job, I have to go to work tomorrow. But like that, like sure that this is just, sort of a quintessential example, but not even thinking that you have the option to do something else keeps you stuck in the same process you're always in, whether it's with a job you don't like, or a career you don't like, or
Yeah.
a relationship you don't like, or whatever it is, right? And so just realizing you have choice is huge. And I love what you said about that. That's a great tip for so many people. To a can-do list, I think is great. And then obviously the other thing about, blending that day and just being aware every day of like, today I want to be more productive, I'm going to do 80-20.
Yeah.
Or today I want to be more relaxed, I'm going to do 20-80.
Yeah.
And I think being aware of like that balance is always changing every day, right? Like if you had a 80-20 or 90-10 the day before, you might not want 4 90-10s in a row,
Yeah.
So that's great advice, man. I really, really like that.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, I learned recently that the most important thing that humans can have is the feeling of autonomy and the feeling of choice. Because when they have that, they're capable of anything. When they feel like they're boxed in and they don't have the freedom to choose or express or do anything, they get knocked down to like 10% capacity because it's not coming from the place that they want it to come from. So autonomy, even if it's just a false feeling of autonomy, creates a lot of power. And speaking of autonomy, speaking of choice, I want to know what it was like when you chose to go play poker in Macau, because I feel like you were there right when it started.
Yeah,
what was that experience like when you went out there and started mixing it up with those guys?
Yeah, that was like by far the best poker experience of my life. And also because, on a personal level, I was just getting serious with my now wife, and we moved out there together. So it was, we were building our life together, as well as creating these incredible memories and all these incredible experiences where, for example, you only have a 30-day visa in Macau. So every 30 days you have to leave the country, and then you could only come back for 20 days, and then you have to leave for a month. So that forced us to get creative with our lifestyle and take all of these justified trips to all of Southeast Asia. So we went to Singapore and Cambodia and Thailand and Indonesia, and many places around within those countries. And that was kind of a lot of the inception of when I realized that I was dealt a winning hand in life too, where I had these experiences in these third world countries where I was like, wow, there were a lot of people that weren't dealt premium hands in life. But that was amazing because I got to see all that with a woman I loved that was super supportive of me, and we were also building, a business together at the time. We were both in affiliate marketing for a long time. I started that from the party poker days, and then I ended up doing other affiliate marketing in like lead generation for many years, and so we did that together before I transitioned to working strictly with her and my own brands. So that was something we were doing together. And then on top of that, we were playing in the biggest poker games in the world with these crazy Chinese businessmen in a foreign country where all the best poker players from all over the world were coming out to compete in these cash games. And it was kind of like the Olympics. And so you had this really close-knit community of poker players that would come from Germany and the UK and Scandinavia and the US. And so we were all friends because we had to be, right? There was nothing to do there besides play poker and gamble and go out to eat. So that's what we would do when we weren't playing poker and sleeping or working out, whatever. We were going out to dinner, and so we were competitors by day and best friends at night. And so we would go out, and we talked about community before. I got to learn poker and strategize with like literally all the best online players in the world at the time, and all the best live players in the world. And so that made me so much better. And it also just allowed me to, excel and reach, really the top of the high stakes cash game world, and thrive and crush those games for years. And that was incredible. So, business was going well. I was having incredible personal time, was traveling the world, got to see all these different countries. And it was just an incredible ride for 4 years. It was, I will look back on those years if I make it to my 70s, 80s, and think they were some of the most crazy and fun of my life. I'm very confident about that. I'd love to write a book about it one day and kind of relive those memories again through communicating them in a written way. That would be, it would be worth doing.
Sounds really awesome.
It was special.
Do you still get out there at all? Like, do you do a yearly trip, or do you find
so I was there this year in Macau. I was playing and coaching, creating content. It was a lot of fun. I went out to Asia twice this year, but I only went to Macau once. But yeah, it's great. I'm not like, so, I've been back every year since, I think. But I was living there, and I had an apartment there for 4 years. So like actually, like rented a place right across the street from the Wynn, where we played poker every day, and Star World, where the big game was, the private game. And I had an apartment there. I left my stuff there. I would spend, I don't know, depending on the year and the visas and all that stuff, 3, 5, 6 months a year there. 3, 4 trips a year. That was it was incredible.
Cool.
But now I don't have my apartment anymore. So, when I go, I stay at the Wynn or whatever, or the Mandarin, and I'm just there more as, I feel like a tourist, because I'm not part of the poker scene there, even though there are still regulars that live there and that are grinding it out, like, doing their thing. I'm not part of that community anymore.
Yeah. How do you find these days the games and the lifestyle out there compare to, say, the games and the lifestyles of staying in California?
Oh, I mean, it's night and day. It's just totally different. So that is strictly, and it's probably the same now as it was when I was there, in terms of lifestyle and whatever, because people still live in the same building, still the same, it's still the same country. There's still the same things to do, but it's just totally different. You there, every day while you're there, and people usually come for between 2 and 5 or 6 weeks. You get up at 10 a.m. You put your name on the list, you go work out and eat, you come back at 2 or 3 and play the game. You play till ever, and then you do it all over again. And, you maybe go out to dinner or whatever, sometime during the game, but that's just like your daily lifestyle, So when you're not playing poker, you're studying poker with friends, you're going out to the cafes and talking strategy. And then when you're not doing that, you're traveling around Southeast Asia, taking some cool lifestyle trip. Whereas, in Southern Cali where I'm here visiting family and I'm playing on Live at the Bike and coaching, whatever, it's just totally different. I mean, it's just like, typical American first world life. It is just so different living in the US or living in Southeast Asia or Macau. Um, people there don't speak English typically. You're in a different culture, so it's a different mindset. Just night and day. But it's specifically the poker scene here is a lot different because, the poker scene here is like, a lot of people are like part-time players, or they play and they have their own business, or they do other things. Like their life is more dynamic and involved in other things here. So, when you go to the casino, it's like a part of your life. It's not your whole thing. Whereas in Macau, it's like a disproportionately large part of your time and energy and life is poker. Whereas in Cali or Vegas or Florida or these other poker hubs around the US, like poker is a slice of the pie. It's not the whole thing. Whereas in Macau, it's like you are a poker player and that's it.
Right. And what about the Chinese players over there? Is it also a lot of like serious pros, or would they have the same dynamic where poker is a slice of the pie for them and they're mostly running businesses and yeah.
Well, it depends on the level, right? So like the high stakes players are all very wealthy, unlimited money Chinese businessmen involved in other things.
Yeah.
But it's different in Macau because nobody lives there. So Macau is an island off the coast of Hong Kong, and they changed the Chinese visa laws where now I think they only have like 3 days or 5 days. In the past, they had longer, but all the VIPs that come are tourists. So they're there on vacation, right? Like, I guess the closest analogy I can make is Vegas, where like, a guy flies in from Florida, comes to Vegas for the weekend, and he's there to gamble.
Mm-hmm.
He's not in his daily routine, but it's even more stark in Macau because like nobody lives there. And, gambling is so much more prominent in the Chinese culture as well, that it's just so much more symbolic and ingrained in their daily life. But everybody is there to gamble, and that's like the focus of the trip. Whereas in the US, if someone goes to Vegas, typically their focus isn't gambling. It's entertainment, it's dinner, it's partying, it's all these other things. And poker or gambling is, again, a slice of that whole pie. Whereas in Asian culture, if people go to Macau, especially, gambling is the center of that trip.
Okay.
And I'm not sure about the revenue split in Macau, but I know in Vegas, for example, when I heard the numbers of the win, they do like 1.1 billion a year in entertainment, and they do 800 million in gaming. Whereas I would doubt that the revenue splits were like that in Macau. I would say it's I'm guessing, but I would say it's much higher split in terms of gaming. So that just sort of changes the dynamic of the life there to a large extent, because the gambling is so much more important. So a VIP that sits in the game in Macau is there to play poker. He's not going to like leave that game at 7 because he's going to see a fucking Cirque du Soleil show. Like that's not going to happen, know? So it's just a different sort of thing. But that makes it a lot more intense. It's a lot more competitive. The VIPs really want to win. They're there to draw blood. They're like in Vegas, someone goes to play poker, they're there to have a good time. In Macau, they go to play poker, they're there to like crush you. So I mean, they might not have the talent, but the intensity of the game in Macau is so much higher because that's just like, the focus. It's like playing on another level. It's just a different experience.
Yeah, I gotcha. For some reason I'm picturing Mortal Kombat and getting the top 2 levels of the tower where you're playing the bosses, and that's
exactly what it's like.
Suddenly the game just got so much harder, and you're just like, who is this dude? Okay.
You're like, now I've reached the final boss. And it's largely like that when the VIP comes, because sometimes the VIP is like, the massive whale. And there's a huge difference between, a small fish and a big fish. And you see that disparity exponentially greater in Macau. So like there'll be a VIP, he'll come and lose 200,000 Hong Kong, which is, 30,000 US, whatever. But then there'll be a VIP he'll come and lose 20 million.
Whoa.
And so there's, maybe not in a day, but like over the period of, a month or a year. And that's the VIP that, a lot of people uproot their lives and live in a different country for. And so like, there's an economy based around a couple people that are like truly, truly epic punters. And it's just a whole different game. And eventually, you know, I've many times over those years got to play with, you know, the final boss.
Yeah.
And it really is like that. Mortal Kombat is an unbelievably great analogy that you just made, because it's very much like that, where you get to the final boss and you're like, okay, this is the big game.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of the big game, I know it's not stakes wise the biggest game, but in terms of kind of promotion and awareness, Live at the Bike, Poker Night in America, these are pretty mainstream games. There's a lot of action on these games, and you seem to be a
Yeah.
staple in pretty much both of them. And I was kind of curious, your motivations for playing. Is it because they're good games? Is it because of the exposure? Is it a mix? Is it because you just love cash games? What drew you to just show up on those shows as often as you seemingly possibly can?
Well, there's definitely all those elements, right? So it's not binary in the sense that like I'm only doing this for this. All those things are totally fair. Obviously, you know, arbitrarily starting at one of them, I do feel like I have a big edge in the game, so I'm gonna profit. I think that's a
Mhm.
smaller motivation. That's probably like my third or fourth motivation. It's one of my least biggest motivations. Just because like the effort to go play in those games and travel around to get there and like cuts into your ROI. And so I don't think about it as much from a business standpoint or a poker
Mhm.
player standpoint. And also the effort to get in those games and coordinate and the publicity. Like it's just the poker is more of a show and it's less about the ROI and the hourly. Like I don't really think about that sort of thing, even
Yeah.
though I won't deny that, like you said, I made 20,000 in the last couple sessions here live the bike. That's real money, and I'm very grateful for that, and I take that seriously. But the main thing playing, but that hourly you can achieve going to play at a casino that nobody knows about, right? So there's obviously something more to playing on a televised game
Mhm.
that you don't get just your hourly, or you get something additionally to that, which I think supersedes the motivation quite a bit. And for me, you know, you touched on those. Obviously, one of them is just I do have personal goals in building a brand, and I think the more, you know, those things offer credibility, because when you play on national television and people can see, you know, some of the good plays you've made and some of the good calls you've made and the folds you've made and stuff like that, those hands and videos get a lot of attention. That's good for your brand. Obviously, I'm not going to deny that that draws people to conscious poker and they might
Mhm.
want to buy our products and services. But more than that, it gives me personally credibility as a poker player, which on a personal standpoint I value more, because I can leverage that to, you know, share things I've learned in poker that apply to life and business through keynotes or writing a book or giving a TED talk or helping other people on their journey. And that's like more what I feel connected to as my purpose in life, that goes beyond just my business or any of my immediate sort of short-term goals with those sorts of superficial things, that like is a vehicle to accentuate those sorts of long-term goals. So like the more that you're exposed in the public, the more you're getting your brand out there, the more you're credible, the more leverage you have to get on other things that help you pivot to other industries and niches that I want to eventually be a part of, like the keynote world, or a podcast, or writing a book, those
Yep.
sorts of things. And obviously building a brand gives you all those opportunities. So I look at it more like from that standpoint. And that's my biggest motivation by far, is that particular one. And then underneath that are like, okay, the far more ancillary benefits of like, okay, someone's going to see that and be like, oh, I want to buy this guy's product, or oh, I'm going to
Mhm.
make 500 or 1,000, whatever, 500 an hour, depending on the size of the game.
Mhm.
I don't want to think about it, whatever it is per hour playing poker. Sure, those things are valuable, but those are ancillary benefits. But I do love playing, and I guess the other motivation that I don't get often, that I would say is my second motivation, is that I love competing, and I'm mainly a high stakes cash game player. I don't, um, and poker is sort of a continuum. When you play cash games, there isn't that prestigiousness that is drawn towards any cash game. Sure, in Macau in the big game, I felt that, and which is why I loved it so much. You get that thrill of like, I'm at the final table, right? You
Yeah.
feel that. You're like,
Yeah.
this is more significant than the final table. You know, you're playing for millions of dollars in every hand, or potentially. So you feel that prestige and you feel that level of competition rise where you're really having to rise to the occasion of not just playing poker like training, but you're playing as a performance. And when you're on TV or streamed game or something like that, you're really doing that, right? Because it's creating this atmosphere of competition where the stakes have been raised just because of the fact that it's on national television. And so that brings out the best in everyone, or the opportunity to perform your best. And that is, it feels to me like I'm showing up on game day for the playoffs, whereas everything else is just the regular season. And so I don't get that thrill often. But when I play, in a high stakes televised game where I know the whole world's watching, I feel that like now I'm at the playoffs and I have to perform and show up. And that's exciting to me. And so those two things, building a personal brand behind it and then performing in the best of my capacity is really what distinguishes those games from anything else.
Wow. I love that.
Thank you.
One of the things I was curious about was if you feel extra pressure and how you deal with it, but hearing what you said already is you thrive on that. You want that, you crave that, and you're someone who rises to the occasion because you want the higher stakes, whereas other people might get nervous about them. And
I get more excited in that environment for sure.
And do you feel too, because I know you do commentary as well, like in some of the early shows, you do call-ins where people could ask you about hands. Do you feel that's yet another opportunity for you to kind of like, it's not play, but you're still kind of on the playoffs because now tons of people are hearing your breakdown of the game and it better be sharp. Do you feel that's another kind of way that you get to rise to the occasion and get to kind of use all your performance skills and your acting skills and demonstrate your knowledge in front of a big audience where, for most people aren't going to volunteer and do that commentary gig?
Yeah. So I'm actually doing commentary this Thursday on Live at the Bike. And I think I'm playing Friday in the big game. But it's cool to do the commentary because you get to interact with the fans. So like the commentary is okay. Like, sure, you get to talk about poker strategy and whatever. But like for me, I'm a people person. So I do the commentary so that after the commentary, I take live call-ins and I can answer questions that people have because I feel like, okay, I'm connecting with others and maybe they have a question that they've been wanting to ask me and I could help them on their journey somehow, or they can like get the perspective that would be really cool to have. And I remember when I was 18, I was in the Bahamas and I was sitting at the bar and Freddie Deeb came over and sat down next to me, and he had just won the Commerce WPT for $1 million. So, he was already obviously a famous player, but now he was like, super legend. And I was starstruck. I was 18 and I was there and I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm alone at a bar with Freddie Deeb. Like this is I didn't even know what to say. So cool. And so I think he he clearly noticed me or maybe saw that I was like, just wanted to talk to him, whatever. And so he just was like, super friendly. He just started talking to me. He's like, hey, how you doing? You here for the tournament? How's your event going? Like just started talking to me. And then he put my drink on his tab and he's like, I got it. Right. And I just thought it was like the coolest thing ever. Cause like, here I am like looking up to this guy and he was just so nice and cool to me. And I remember I told him about a situation at the tournament where I got short on chips and what do I do? And he gave me some advice, which, still stuck with me to this day. And I just remember thinking like, if I'm ever the Freddie Deeb to somebody else, like I want them to feel the way I felt around Freddie, so I want to be like as cool as Freddie was to me. Cause this was like one of the coolest experiences I've had with someone that I thought was like someone I looked up to.
Yeah. And
I've had other experiences that were the opposite. And I don't want to name names, but that I just completely was like disappointed with and let down by. Yeah. And so I feel like if I can do that, if I could offer that to someone in any way, like it's always stuck with me. And so like, I like doing things like that where I can connect with other people, like call-ins or whatever. And I always try and like interact with all my fans on social media and do things like that, even though it's not on the performance stage, just because I am compelled by that. But I love doing the commentary and the call-ins. That's like really cool. It's a good way to like interact with people in a way that you otherwise couldn't. and then it's a rewarding experience in a different way than playing.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a really almost magical kind of point there, with your story about Freddie Deeb. I love that story. That when when you get advice or a favor or attention or anything from anyone you look up to, it's worth like 100x what it would be if you got that attention or that feedback or that advice from anyone else. So if you
Yeah.
can become someone that people really respect and look up to, and they kind of see you as a role model and want to be like you, then you give them 1 minute of attention. And that's worth maybe 10 hours of attention from other places. And that message is going to really stick, and they're going to hold that to their heart. So it's amazing how now that you're in this position, you've really worked hard for it. You've deserved it. You've earned it. You really live, you practice what you preach, and you live that truth that now you can give someone 1 minute at a time, 5 minutes of time, and it's going to have a huge impact on, years and years and years of their lives. So it's cool how you can kind of leverage your service that way.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, right? Like you're giving small amounts of time, but like maybe it could have a big impact. Like I remember that conversation with Freddie. It wasn't like we went on a retreat together. Like we
Yeah.
talked for 5 minutes at the bar, but like I still tell that story. Like I still remember the conversation. I remember the feeling I had. I remember the advice he gave me. And like there's a great quote by Maya Angelou. Is like, people won't remember what you did or what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. I'm butchering the quote, but like it's so true. And like that feeling could happen in, a minute.
Yeah.
It could happen in 5 minutes. Like it could happen in such a small amount of time. And like, it's an opportunity to like just have a massive, like, like on a small scale, just like do something good or pay something forward on a small scale that could have a big impact. That's just like, something that you could offer, right? Like it's not every day you have the opportunity to be, you always have the opportunity to be kind to other people, but it's not always the opportunity you have to influence someone in a positive way in that regard. And so I take that responsibility really seriously. And I'm like always grateful that, that someone like wants my perspective on something. And so I try and take that seriously.
It's kind of like charity. Like when you get to a point, if you're very financially abundant and wealthy in life, and you can, an extra $100 isn't going to make a huge difference for you, but it could make a huge difference for someone else. That by donating that money to a charity, you're almost turning like lead into gold in doing so, because it's the same resource, it's the same $100, but in their hands, it's worth so much more than in your hands because of that law of diminishing returns. And the same with kind of knowledge and experience. You might be offering a tip that to you, it's just a casual tip. It's no big deal, but that tip is going to shift everything for them. Like you said with your mentors earlier, with Tom and Andrew, like that kind of thing, and sharing with each other. People are giving off stuff that they don't think is a huge deal, but for the person who hasn't learned it yet, it's everything.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Real beautiful.
Good stuff. Yeah.
So
I'm
talking
sure you're
over
in that spot too. Go ahead.
Yeah. Like, well, actually, that's something that was really interesting is I felt that I was in that spot for quite some time. And then I just kind of got caught up in the rush, caught up in the high, chasing numbers, made some of not the best decisions. And then I kind of humbled myself, and I'm like, okay, I need to stop making content for a bit. I need to check myself, and I need to honor where I am, because it's what you said. I realized I had an audience. I realized there were some people who looked up to me, and there were some people who, wanted to hear what I had to say. But when I realized I kind of let my ego get the best of me, I was making some poor decisions and I wasn't living right. I didn't feel that it was right for me to go on camera and speak and give advice when I was in that place. So I said, okay, I'm going to take, as long as it takes, whether it's 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, I'm going to get myself right. And when I feel like I actually have something of value to give, where I'm going to share things with people that are actually going to have a positive impact rather than a negative impact, because I'm coming from the right place, then I'll come back. But until then, I have to respect the fact that there are people who look up to me, and I don't want to tell them things that aren't going to serve them, because people listen really strongly to what their role models say, the same way we usually hold on to what our parents say to us at a young age. And they don't even realize like how how much we held on to this one little thing
Yeah,
the one time they got mad. Because when
it's
it's that person
crazy.
you look up to, it's just like, oh my God, like it sticks with us so much. So I feel it's really important to just honor and
Yeah,
respect that. And I can
so
tell you're
true.
someone who really lives it. And so
Yeah,
it's easy for
I
you to show
really
up
try
and
and be conscious of things that I say or advice I give and stuff because you just never know like where someone's at or what they're gonna
yeah.
take or like it's hard because it's hard because like you want to say like oh do this or whatever but like I try and phrase things like this works for me because like it's so individual with anything right with
Hmm.
advice or with routine or with habit or lifestyle that I try to take that responsibility seriously. I'm sure I make mistakes. I'm sure of that, but it's the intention that I think is important, and it sounds like you have that too, which is great, man. Good for you. A lot of respect.
Thank you. And something I know that you're into, and I think a lot of the up and comers, they get pointed the wrong direction with tournaments because they're very excited. They're exciting. There's the adrenaline rush. They're very glamorized, and so a lot of people think, oh, I want to play tournaments. I want to get rich quick, kind of the lottery mentality.
Yeah,
I came up through cash
yeah.
games. I know you came up through cash games too, and you focus on cash games now. Can you just talk a bit about why, even though they don't have the glitz and glamour, that you really think they're the better way, and why you chose them as, your path for the most part?
Well, I mean, if you just look at the numbers, so one of the things I do with my clients is we kind of develop like a business plan for them and their poker journey because a lot of them come to me and they're like, well, I want to make like whatever 5K a month on the side playing poker while I run my business and I they might have a hypothesis that like I want to play tournaments and this is what I enjoy doing and whatever. And then when we break down the numbers, I'm very practical, and so I go into the numbers and I show them the variance involved and the bankroll they need and the amount of swings they could expect, the big blinds that they can expect to win, their hourly rate, and we sort of reverse engineer it. And I show them like two business models, and I say, look, this is if you only play cash games. This is what you need to do, and this is your variance. This is your probability of loss after a year. And those numbers are very compelling. If they're a winning player, the probability of loss is always, almost zero after a year, depending on how many hours they play and how of a winner they are. The bankroll they need is much smaller. The variance is lower. Their win rate is higher. Their hourly is higher, etc. Then I show them the same business plan with the corresponding tournaments that they want to play. And the variance is 5 times higher. The bankroll they need is bigger. The hourly is smaller. The probability of winning is smaller. Everything is just objectively a lot worse, like exponentially worse. Not like slightly worse. We're talking about like extremely worse. And so when you see the numbers on paper, anyone that has that is focused on the numbers and the business and making it a lifestyle is always my experience almost always drawn to cash games because of the math, and then they just allow you to succeed in that way. And poker is already, look, we're already talking about something that is gambling. There's a ton of variance. There's a lot of luck in the short term. And when you amplify that by playing a format of poker like tournaments, skill may not be the deciding factor in terms of whether you're a winner or a loser in a given year.
Hmm.
Okay, so a given year, and most people when they see those numbers, and we talk about, I'm very strict about them allocating money segregated in a separate bank account to poker that's non lifestyle related and that is completely discretionary. And most people, that come to me that want to work with me, that they're serious about doing this, they have lofty financial goals, they want to dedicate 10, 20, 50,000 to poker, and they see where that, I mean, these people are successful businessmen, they're investors, they do well in their business and their lives. They see where the 50K is potentially going to end up in a tournament business plan, or they see where it's going to end up in a cash game business plan. They're much more compelled by those sorts of things. And that's what I teach now based on, my experience of what I've learned over the past 15 years in doing this. And again, teaching it has made it so much more obvious to me than it was when I knew it sort of intuitively growing up in poker, where I didn't have these resources and I didn't go through it as methodically, but then forcing myself to do it for others and helped me get better at doing it myself and really creating my own sort of business plan out of necessity when I started playing a lot of the higher stakes cash games in Macau, where I was like, needing to be more cognizant of, where the risk involved, and then coupling that with, the high stakes tournaments. I was playing the 100Ks for a year or two around different places around the world, and in Monaco, Barcelona, St. Kitts, and just really going through the numbers and realizing like, wow, I always win in cash games, and tournaments is a little bit more of lottery where two of the numbers. It's just so much more compelling. Not to say there isn't edge in tournaments, right? Your EV is still high. It's just your variance is so high that the time you need to, sort of guarantee you're going to be a winner or outlast the variance is just too high for most players that are recreational, and even a lot of professionals, because they have to, that money is practical for them. They have to pay bills with it, or they have, they want to make investments with it, or they want to use it for something. And so that's, it's basically, it comes down to the numbers, which is why I think cash games are just so compelling for professionals.
Yeah, I agree. And a couple other things I really like about cash games is when you're playing a cash game, you're in full control. You choose when you start, you choose when you stop. If you're feeling off that day, you can quit early in the session. You can eat when you want to. You can choose what stakes you're playing that day, move up and down accordingly, choose the table you want, choose the seat you want. There are so many things that you have control over that impact your win rate greatly. Whereas tournaments, you're basically signing everything over to whoever's running the event. You're adhering to their schedule, which might vary each day, what time you finish playing, what time you take your dinner break. You have no idea what table you're going to get seated on, whether it's going to be a good table draw or a bad one. And you have to play higher stakes as the day goes on. So you're going to get more tired, and the stakes are going to get higher, and you're going to feel more pressure. And it's really just hilarious how they have this structure where the stakes get higher, so your adrenaline gets taken to the max at the end of the day, and then you're expected to be able to go to bed and wake up on very little sleep to play the next day. Like it's just a format that makes
everyone undergoes the same thing. So I mean, it is sort of fair, and I understand the lure of tournaments. Believe me, I'm compelled by them too. I love the competitive nature. I love the stakes that a tournament creates with this life and death sort of thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm compelled by the idea of investing 10,000 in the main event and winning 8 million. All those things, I feel those things too emotionally. I'm not, privy to these sorts of things. But when you think about it from a lifestyle and a business plan, just cash games are just so compelling if you have the talent for them. I think it just makes so much more sense. Your hourly is just going to be so much higher with so much more consistency that it's hard to justify the opportunity cost of playing a lot of tournaments.
Yeah, I think also expenses are generally going to be lower with cash than tournaments.
Totally.
But also one thing I really realized, because in 2013 I decided I wanted to go for tournaments because I wanted to experience that same rush that I vicariously experienced through Greggy, and it took me about 3 years to get it. And I got a big score and I got the rush. I'm like, oh, okay, this is what it's all about. And while I was studying it and watching, my mentors for tournament play and seeing how much stress they were under and seeing like the emotional strain of it and then feeling it myself, I'm like, even if the money was slightly better, the amount of stress it places on the body and the kind of unpredictability of the emotions, again, taken to highs and disappointments from beats and stuff.
People underestimate that.
It eats away at you so much that I think it's really hard to stay healthy, unless you piece yourself out perfectly and you have a structure, everything you're going to play. And even still, it's very volatile emotionally, that I think people don't realize how taxing it's going to be on them.
It's so much more to manage too. I mean, if you're managing pieces and business, it's just a disaster. And then also like people struggle when they go on downswings in cash games. Yeah. But like the amount of stress you're going to place on yourself by going on downswings in tournaments is like 10x that, Mm-hmm. And it's just like people underestimate their ability to play well while losing. And so all these things that you discussed, like that you mentioned in your chat with me just now, and these sorts of things where like the mentality, like how are those things going to affect your ability to play your A game next time. Whereas in cash games, it's easier to play your A game consistently.
Mm-hmm.
And then you play your A game more consistently, your win rate is better, which thereby increases the gap in variance and win rate and hourly between tournaments and cash games even further. And those are things that are like hard to quantify that people underestimate. And so all these things just compound to make, I think, cash games just a clear choice for a long-term poker strategy.
Yeah. Okay, so talking about cash games, talking about, playing your best, your A game, feeling good, playing better poker, and just being a better poker player. I've got the Conscious Poker website up, so I just kind of swapped your camera for the Conscious Poker website, so people are kind of seeing it. Can you talk about you've talked a little bit about what there is at Conscious Poker. We've talked about the courses, the membership, and the coaching, but can you talk about the easiest way for people to get involved in it, and what they can expect if they come on board for, say, a month versus 3 months versus a year kind of thing?
Great question. So let's start at the beginning. The easiest way to get involved is just check out the site, and you could just enter your email free, and you can get the hand reading system that I described here in an email. And there's a PDF that I'll send you. Again, it's totally free, that describes kind of how to think about hand reading. And I focus on hand reading because I think it's one of my better skills, but I think it's also one of the most important skills to have in poker, because if you can figure out what other people have, you can outplay them. The sky's sort of the limit, right? Like, that is the ultimate skill. It's what you're trying to do every single hand. It's the puzzle you're trying to solve, is to figure out, what the hell does my opponent have, and what do I do with that information, right? That's sort of step 2. But this is the first sort of thing you need to figure out in order to increase your win rate at poker. And so I made that system available free as a PDF. And there are some options when you opt in to take a look at some more premium content. We have like an upgraded hand reading system version, which is $8 if you want it. If not, totally no pressure. No pressure about that as well. There's some courses in there and some videos that walk you through the program as well. And then obviously we have a blog that's totally free, where I produce some 10-page blog content about a subject. So there's one about bet sizing strategy, which is what I believe is like the best piece of free content about that subject. It's like literally a 10-page blog post about everything you need to know about bet sizing strategy, or mastering the heart of hand reading, the post I told you about before with my process, or just cash game poker strategy or tournament poker strategy. There's all those things that are in depth on the blog. And again, that's totally free content as well. So check those things out. And then the membership is meant to be taken linear. So there are courses when you join the membership that you take in order, and you'll start with Mastering Poker Math, where you'll take a course on all the things poker math related. And then after that, there's Hand Reading Foundation, which really goes over that 4-step process in detail about all the things you need to know about hand reading, and walks you through exactly how to implement that. And then there's a library of videos where there's 90 or 100 videos that are broken down by category. And it's really useful because there's a little filtering system. So let's say you're like, oh, I really want to work on 3-betting strategy. You just click the drop-down menu and click on 3-bet, and you can sort by all the videos that talk about 3-betting strategy. And then some of the videos have worksheets too to help you kind of implement what you learned as well. And so in the videos, they're more in depth than the YouTube videos, where I go into, Poker Cruncher, and I walk you through the lab of EV and those sorts of things that I don't really have time to talk about, or they're not really formatted correctly for YouTube. They're much more in depth. And I would say in the membership, we have some great testimonials and feedback from people that have joined and that have seen great results. And I mean, the way I think about it is the membership is there's a free trial, first of all. So you have no risk. You just try it out for free for 14 days. If you don't absolutely love it or don't feel like it's worth twice what you're going to pay for it, just cancel. It's totally fine. I don't want people to pay for something that they don't feel like they believe in or they find value for. And that's something that we changed as an approach to the business model, because we were if people try, we want people to try our product, right? Because we believe if someone tries our product, they're going to be compelled to stay on board because they're going to see the value that we're offering. So that's why I give away the hand reading system for free. That's why we have a blog and YouTube and all these things, because it's like if people see content and the free content is helping them, then they're going to be like, oh, well, it's a no-brainer to pay for this paid content that is structured in that way. And the way I think about it, our membership is $49 a month. If you make, one good decision, let's say you play, 1-3 no limit. If you make, one good decision in a month because of something you learned, then the content's going to pay for itself, even twofold, right? I mean, $100 is not that much at 1-3. You could win, 2,000-3,000 a month in that game, 5,000. So, if you make one good decision, you're going to double the amount of money you're investing in the program. It just feels like a no-brainer, and we wanted to structure it that way so that it just was a worthwhile purchase for anyone that was serious about poker. And so we always try to make sure they're getting twice what they're paying, and that's one of the goals that we have as a brand. So that's a little bit more about how to get involved. Obviously, for me personally, I'm like very responsive to everyone. I always look for feedback and how to improve things. So you can always just hit the contact page and send me an email that goes directly to me. I read all my email. So if you want to contact me about anything through Conscious Poker, that's a great way to get in touch, or just on social as well.
Yeah. Okay, cool, man. I got to tell you, your new site looks really good, man.
Thank you.
It looks really good. I remember the first iteration and the second and the third, and this one, like, props to the team, pass on props to the whole team, dude. Everything looks really, really good. Well done.
Thank you. We got some A players working with us. All the graphics are original. Great graphic designer. I worked closely with the web designer to help out. My wife she's great at design, and she did all like the intuition of the layout. We actually just redid the membership in March, and it's like the layout is incredible. It's like so intuitive. There's just like these neat little drop-down menus where you can sort by like cash game or tournaments, or pre-flop strategy or post-flop strategy or whatever you want to learn. There's hashtags, so you can click on a hashtag and all the videos with that subject will populate. There's recommended videos based on your watching preferences. There's some really cool stuff in there to just make your user experience very intuitive and valuable. So thank you for that. But that's something we put a lot of attention into as well.
Yeah, I can also see now why you didn't rush to bring other people on board, because by the sounds of it, you kind of didn't need to. You had the knowledge that you needed. You knew what you needed to teach people to make them good players. You had the vision, and you didn't need to complicate it or dilute it by having to cater to other people's needs. You're just kind of like, I got this. And once the foundation's super, super solid, maybe bring on some support players, but you kind of had it, and you just needed to see it through to bring it where it is now.
I needed to put in the work before I just started to outsource that. I mean, it's like by the time I could create a strategy video quicker than I could explain to another coach the strategy video I want them to create, So it's like I have so many more courses in the pipeline that I want to bring into the membership, and things and concepts that I want to teach, that I feel like until I've kind of taught all the things that I want to teach, I'm still going to do it. And then when I feel like burnt out from this, or I feel like, okay, I've produced all the content that I want, and I feel like I'm kind of a hamster on a wheel again, just sort of like saying the same things, or I don't really have any more courses I want to create or products, then I could bring in, someone else that's like, hey, I want to share it this way, or, whatever. So I'm still kind of exploring this stage of my own journey, and it's really fun. I'm actually going back to Italy in a month, and I have a new course I'm going to build for the membership that I'm really excited about, and I'm going to be releasing that in the membership soon. So each month that you're a member, you get a new course.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be putting that out as well, hopefully in October, and I'm excited about it. So like these things still excite me to build this content. And it's like I said, follow your sort of effort and excitement in life to kind of understand your trajectory. And so as long as I'm still compelled by going back in the lab and creating that new course and producing an amazing product, I'm going to just, keep going.
Yeah. I dig it, man.
Thanks a lot.
Follow the passion. When you're loving the grind of poker, play poker. When you're loving teaching, do teaching. If you fall out of love with either of those things, sit and be like, what makes me happy? What is it that I stopped doing that I really enjoyed? And when that thing comes to mind, do that for a day, and see if that's enough to bring you on path to make more content, or if it's, oh, maybe I need to pivot, and being in that joyful state will kind of open the creative pathways to see what's possible.
I love that. That's great
Yeah.
summary perspective there.
Yeah, cool. So I've got your website on screen. I've got your YouTube channel is Conscious Poker now. I've got your Instagram and Twitter, ALEC TORELLI. That's where people should follow you at. Um,
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure. I'm very active on social. I, read, respond to all my comments. Definitely hit me up if, you're on there. Say hey, tell me you found me here, or if you have questions, reach out.
cool. And people know about the free membership. So, guys, head on over to consciouspoker.com, sign up, see what you think of the content. You're probably going to really enjoy it. If you stayed around for this long in the conversation, you're definitely going to
Yeah,
stick around for the membership and like what you get there. Um,
yeah, for sure.
Alec, is there I mean, first, I just want to say I really appreciate you making the time. It's amazing how when I'm like, all right, I'm ready to do this, you're like, cool, let's do it in 2 days. How quickly you made it happen. So, massive gratitude for doing that and showing up and coming through. This has been a lot of fun.
Thanks
Is
for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
For sure, my pleasure. Is there anything you want to, leave the aspiring poker players out there with? Any words of wisdom or advice you'd like to share to maybe the younger generation?
Yeah, just to really be aware of what it is that you actually want and reverse engineer to get that. So a lot of people are like compelled by the poker lifestyle, or they're like, oh, I like poker, therefore I want to play professionally full time. And it's like
Hmm.
it doesn't necessarily work that way. Like the lifestyle of a professional poker player might not work for anyone. And just because you can make money doing it doesn't mean that that's what you should do for your life. But maybe it does. But I have a lot of people come to me in DMs and like, oh, I want to play poker. I could make this much money doing it. I want to do that. And it's like, have a plan, really think this out, really think this through, set aside money that you can totally afford to lose in a segregated bank account where your living expenses are covered. And if you want to go for it, go for it. But then really try and understand like the place that you want poker to fit in your life, and what your sort of niche is within poker, what your sort of skill is, what you enjoy doing, whether you want to play, online tournaments or live cash games. I mean, it's just so different, right? There's all these sort of like micro economies within poker.
Hmm.
And then just aware of like how that changes over time, and that what you started out aspiring to and trying to get to might not be what you want in a couple of years. And so to think about sort of the long-term play of it. My general experience, and I say this as someone that's like sort of quote made it in poker and that
Hmm.
sells poker and that coaches poker, is that most people, again, you can't apply like stereotypes to everything, is like most people would be better off playing poker part-time and having another source of income or doing something else as their primary thing. And I think it's great to be able to play poker, but it's not great to have to play poker. And it's hard to get above the point where you're sort of like above the bullshit, where the money that you make playing poker doesn't really affect your life. You have to be playing pretty high stakes to do that. And it's quite hard to get to that ceiling. And typically, if you have a skill set that can get you to that level in poker, you have a skill set that could also make you more money. Not that it's only about the money, but that it could bring more value doing something else with a lot less stress and a lot more consistency. And so I would say that it's great to be able to make money playing poker. You should have a business plan. You should be responsible. Um, Try, maybe make 2 to 5K a month on the side is the sweet spot, I think, for most people. And I think that's what most people should strive for. Um, Whereas doing it professionally is its own entire thing.
Yeah.
Um, that's been my experience. And again, I'm saying that like as someone that's been a professional for a long time, and I still feel that way. So I feel compelled to share that because yeah, it is what I find that works best for most people, the balance.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, and I really appreciate the honesty you share with myself, with
Yeah,
all the viewers. Okay, so thanks to everyone who tuned in today. I hope
thank
you
you
guys
guys.
enjoyed the podcast and learned a lot. And Alec, I look forward to seeing you for the next one. I'm sure we'll have another one of these conversations down the road as well as things continue
Yeah.
to evolve. So guys, check
After I
them
win
out.
the 2020 main event, I'm coming back.
2020 main event. There it's going to be $10 million. Let's get stacking. I'm Evan Jarvis, guys. This has been Alec Torelli for ConsciousPoker.com. Check him out on YouTube and on the socials. And you guys know what to do. Take what you learned, go out there, and get stacking.